The crimson cloak of twilight was descending upon Manchester, New Hampshire, as the dissonant melodies of urban life softened into the evening's lullaby. Amid this symphony of existence, our protagonist, Detective Hayden Clark, stood as a stalwart bastion of justice. Framed by the amber glow of the setting sun, his countenance, stern yet empathetic, bore the evidence of a life lived under the weight of unspoken burdens. Hayden, cast in the somber light of his solitary apartment, was preparing for another evening, plunged into the complexities of his newest case. It was a curious anomaly, a riddle wrapped in bureaucratic secrecy and shadowed by the dreary walls of the Manchester Mental Asylum. His previous cases had been complex puzzles, yet none had whispered to him in the unnerving way this one did. The maw of the asylum yawned before him, swallowing any pretense of cheerfulness from the city's busy life. Its eerie silence rang louder than the screams that presumably echoed through its stark, sterile corridors. As he walked its chilling halls, his interaction with the staff and patients was laced with the foreshadowing of something uncanny. "Mr. Denton," he began, addressing the asylum's officious-looking manager, "you have an impressive institution here, yet I've been finding some inconsistencies in your financial records." Denton blinked, adjusting his glasses on his austere face. "Detective, we're transparent with our funds. Perhaps you've overlooked something?" "Perhaps," Hayden mused, his gaze unwavering. A flicker of unease darted across Denton's eyes. The conversations flowed, imbued with veiled tension, yet outwardly steeped in the benign. From the matronly nurse whispering about strange staff meetings, to the soft-spoken janitor who'd found remnants of bizarre symbols drawn with chalk in the basement. Each interaction added more spectral shades to the growing canvas of his investigation. Yet it was not just the external that he wrestled with. He was in constant dialogue with his own past, his previous battles with an eating disorder. He had wrestled with his demons, as monstrous as any, that hid within the asylum, and emerged victorious but scarred. The institutional meals he forced himself to consume while on the asylum grounds were stark reminders of his own battles against the maw of insatiable hunger and the relentlessness of control. The tenebrous grip of the asylum, its cryptic accounts, the enigmatic staff, the troubled inmates, and the echo of his personal trauma painted an uncanny image, one that crawled beneath his skin, nestling within his consciousness. Yet as he retired to his apartment, the final stroke on that day's canvas was an aged newspaper article he had chanced upon, speaking of a horrific tale of a cannibalistic cult from Manchester's forgotten past. As the whispers of this bygone horror danced in his mind, the anomalies of his investigation took on a more sinister hue. The night fell, and the contours of Manchester City blurred into abstract shapes under the shadowy cloak of cosmic horror, setting the stage for his descent into an abyss of obscure rituals. The dawn arrived in Manchester with an uncharacteristic bleakness. A tangible dread nestled in the air, like fog clinging to the skeletal winter trees. Detective Hayden Clark, his features washed with the pallid morning light, sat over his desk, ruminating upon the unearthly whispers that his investigation had begun to evoke. From the recesses of the asylum's bureaucratic web, he discovered a disconcerting pattern. Discrete financial transactions were tied to a select group of staff members, all historically connected to the asylum and to the city itself. His interactions with them bore a sinister undercurrent, like stepping stones towards a forgotten abyss of truth. In the sterile asylum cafeteria, he sat across a thin, nervous woman, Nurse Margaret. Her hands twisted a faded handkerchief, and her eyes, clouded with fear, darted across the room. "Strange things," she said in hushed tones. "I've seen them after hours. Meetings in the cellar, sir. Mutterings. Symbols." He pressed her gently, noting the terror etching deeper lines into her weathered face. "Symbols. Like these." He showed her the chalk-drawn hieroglyphs the janitor had previously shared. Recognition flashed in her eyes, followed by a fresh wave of terror. She nodded, a barely perceptible movement, before excusing herself hastily, leaving him with more puzzling pieces of this macabre jigsaw. While the asylum began to reveal its secrets, the world outside seemed to mirror its chaos. The city that once bustled with life was hushed, subdued under a shroud of unease. The people's eyes carried an unspoken terror that was a chilling reflection of those within the asylum. He felt the city shift, transform into an eerie mausoleum of Manchester's forgotten history. His nighttime reading led him deeper into the city's chilling past, the cannibalistic cult that once held Manchester in its terrifying grasp. The stories of orgiastic rituals and human sacrifices under the cover of nightfall echoed through the centuries, landing on the doorstep of his investigation. In his sleep, nightmares of blood-soaked feasts and primitive rituals danced macabrely, their grotesque choreography led by the asylum staff. He woke up in cold sweat, his heartbeat a frantic rhythm against his ribs. His trauma of his past, intertwined with the disturbing reality of his present, coalesced into a petrifying blend of fear and revulsion. As the echoes of these obscure rituals seeped into his consciousness, the asylum's grim silhouette in the heart of Manchester served as a constant reminder of the uncanny. A growing sense of paranoia crept into his days, following him like an omnipresent specter, shaping his reality into a fearsome tableau. Haunted by the asylum's enigmatic charm, driven by his unyielding quest for justice, and fueled by the silent cry for help from both the living and the dead, he prepared himself for the monstrous belly of the beast that awaited him. The city of Manchester, draped in the half-light of the setting sun, held its breath for the approaching storm. As twilight unveiled the spectral face of Manchester, Hayden found himself standing at the precipice of a terror that clawed at the edges of comprehension. The city, once a beacon of familiar comfort, now loomed like a leviathan of cosmic horror, its innards crawling with the malignant heart of his investigation. He was stepping into the belly of the beast, teetering on the edge of madness. The clues, as cryptic as the moon's shadow, coalesced into a monstrous reality. The asylum's staff, shrouded in an archaic lineage, were not mere caretakers. They were the modern incarnations of a cannibalistic cult, their horrifying appetites satiated by the helpless inmates. His discoveries led him to a clandestine meeting in the basement of the asylum. Concealed in darkness, he observed the macabre ritual unfold. The staff, their eyes ablaze with unholy fervor, circled around an intricate symbol marked on the floor, their chants echoing through the cellar, piercing the silence with insidious whispers of profane feasts. Seeing their monstrous transformation, he was crippled by a nauseating wave of revulsion. The sight of their primal indulgence magnified his internal battles with the eating disorder, intertwining his personal nightmare with the gruesome reality that was unfolding before his eyes. His world twisted and warped, defying the laws of reality, a tangible echo of his disordered past. The asylum's corridors stretched into abyssal tunnels, the mundane sounds of the city warped into distorted screams, and the taste of the asylum's meals, now tainted with grotesque implications, provoked a visceral response. Yet he held on to his sanity with a desperate grip. His loyalty to truth, his unwavering resolve for justice, these were his beacons in the dreadful darkness that threatened to consume him. In his weakest moments, he clung to these threads of his identity, knitting them into a cloak of resilience against the horrifying chaos. With his courage being both armor and weapon, he stood before the cult, his voice resounding through the dismal basement. He exposed their atrocities, his words piercing through their deranged unity, sowing seeds of dissent, creating cracks in their horrifying solidarity. "Your reign of terror ends here," he declared, his voice ringing with grim resolve. His revelation met with outraged denials, escalating tensions, a storm on the brink of unleashing its wrath. As the echoes of his confrontation dwindled, the stage was set for a final act. He had torn the veil of secrecy surrounding the cult, revealing their monstrous appetite to the world. Yet the echoes of their cannibalistic rituals lingered, threatening to engulf him in a flood of cosmic horror. His world and Manchester itself stood on the precipice of the harrowing finale, the unveiling of prevailing shadows. As the blood-orange dawn crept over the brooding silhouette of Manchester, Hayden Clark, a solitary figure against the breaking day, stood amidst the ruins of terror. The asylum, once a towering monolith of dread, now wore the mark of his defiance. As Manchester woke to the shocking revelations, the cult's monstrous practices stood naked under the gaze of public scrutiny. Despite the sinister influence of the cult, their grotesque rituals were exposed to the world, their stronghold beginning to crumble. The once silent victims found their voice, their collective outcry ringing through the city like a clarion call for justice. Hayden, the calm within the storm, orchestrated the dismantling of this hideous ensemble. He rallied the law, led the charge against the asylum, ensuring every cult member faced the justice they had so long evaded. "This ends here," he stated, his voice a beacon in the enveloping darkness, an anchor in the tumultuous sea of chaos. His conversations with the cult members were an eerie ballet of defiance and guilt. The cult leader, Denton, sneered across the interrogation table, his mask of sanity shattered. "We were merely keeping tradition alive, Detective." His nonchalant admittance sent chills down Hayden's spine. As the case drew to its horrific close, Hayden's own internal battles waged on. His past eating disorder, stirred into a whirlwind by the cult's gruesome appetite, left him grappling with the specter of his own fears. Each bite, each taste, became a grotesque echo of the cult's hideous practices. He was caught in a relentless storm of horror and personal torment. But in the face of this unbearable weight, he found an ironclad resilience within himself. He harnessed the shadows of his past, using them as a force to dismantle the present terror. His trauma became his strength, his weakness, a weapon. The man who had once battled the demons of his own mind now stood as a beacon of hope against the backdrop of cosmic horror. However, the victory carried a chilling cost. The asylum's secrets, though laid bare, left a haunting residue. While standing tall amidst the crumbling edifice of terror, he was a changed man. His encounter with the unfathomable horror left a permanent scar on his psyche, a mark that would forever remind him of the abyss he had stared into. The city of Manchester breathed a sigh of relief, its scars a testament to the prevailed shadows. The asylum, the heart of the beast, stood silent and defeated. Hayden, marked and changed, yet standing resolute, served as a stark reminder of the human capacity to endure, to rise even from the depths of cosmic horror. The echoes of the cannibal cult, though hushed, still resonated in the marrow of the city, the story of their rise and fall forever etched into the annals of Manchester's history. We appreciate you tuning in. If you fancied the content, show your support with a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to keep up with our eerie adventures. Eldritch Tales Factory has plenty more to offer. Until next time.